Good afternoon. Welcome to the State Board of Education's work session meeting. We have live streaming available through the State Board of Education website, www.education.ne.gov/stateboard. So we welcome our viewers as well. And Denise, would you please call the roll?
Patricia Tam,
Yes.
Rachel Wise,
Yes.
Maureen Nichols,
Yes.
Patrick McPherson,
Yes.
Molly O'Halloran,
Present.
John Witzel,
Yes.
Lisa Fricky,
Yes.
Patsy Kojans,
Yes.
Commissioner Bloomstead.
Present.
All present.
Okay, the March State Board work session will now come to order. And information regarding the Open Meetings Act is posted on the east wall of this room on the south side of the door. I did give you the live web streaming, and I remind everyone to engage their microphones before speaking and to turn them off when they are done speaking. And please turn off your personal cell phones. So we will move to board reports, dates, and discussion items. And so we have, well, it's been not too long since we've been here, but I know that a lot of people have been going to meetings and attending things, so let's hear where you've been and what you've done. Patrick?
I'll begin by engaging my mind before I engage my speaker. How's that? I had the opportunity to attend a number of events or a number of things during the last month. I did sit in on the legislative hearing on February 6th on a couple bills. That gave me an opportunity to connect with a couple senators whom I met with on February the 10th. I met with Senator Erdman early in the morning, and then Senator with the Commissioner and Brian at lunch with Senator Linehan, and that was part of my job as directed by the chairman of the Legislative Committee, Rachel. So trying to do what I can there to build relationships. I attended the social studies seminar here in Lincoln on the 14th and 15th and found that very interesting. I'm not going to go into any discussion on these. I've got so many of these things I seem to have done, so but I found that very informative, and I think that it's a great process for deciding where we're going in the future. And it was great to hear from so many folks on that. On the 21st with John, I was able to attend a Nebraska, or at UNO, I've got that here somewhere, an Educational Leadership class, and got a lot of input and gave a little, but John gave more probably. And then attended the Nebraska Association of the Gifted meeting in Omaha on the 23rd and 24th. Ginger Lohman was the kickoff speaker and did a great job, but there were a couple interesting things that we had lots of opportunity to attend seminars. I forwarded to Pat an invitation to attend a middle school discussion on the Socratic method in Omaha. If anybody's interested in doing that, it's kind of aimed at high-level or at children with open-ended questions and discussion of high-level activities, so that they get a chance to really get involved. You put all these kids in the room, and then they, you pose a question to them, and it's an open-ended question, and they get a chance to discuss that. We had about 6 of the kids that braved the weather on Friday to show up for that, and we were invited back. I think, Patsy, you were one that wanted to maybe do that, so we've got an invite to go back to that if we want to do that and see it in full operation with 25 or 30 students. So I thought that was good. And then one thing I thought was really interesting, I don't know how many of you are aware of Nebraska now, but we spend a lot of time talking about AP classes, but here you got an opportunity for these kids in high school to actually take courses at the University of Nebraska, and they can take them without paying a lot of the fees. So in other words, if they were going to normally pay, once they got there, $675 for a full class, they can actually take it online for $250, and it'll count toward their graduation once they get there, or it can be transferred to any of the 10 Big Ten schools. So, I mean, it's a real opportunity. I mean, like I say, we talk about AP classes, but here's an opportunity for kids throughout the high school system in Nebraska to really get a leg up on their college credits, and it's transferable. They I think they pay only like a $35 registration fee. They won't have to pay that again when they get to school, but it's just, I think, really phenomenal that they get to do that, and it's such a tremendous savings for them. So that's
Well, and
something.
the fact that it's transferable is,
And it's transferable to
Yeah, that's
any of the
great.
Big Ten schools, because it goes on a transcript to the University of Nebraska, even as they're in high school. And it gives them also some opportunities to use the Nebraska library system and have other benefits from the university. So I'd encourage people to look into that. That's really great. Now, in our STEM sessions, they taught us how to use boomerangs and things like that. Let's see whether this works. Forget it. It doesn't work. I did well at the seminar, but there were a lot of, at the NAG sessions, there were a lot of STEM-oriented conversations, and I failed that one, obviously. Thank you.
you should have had a fourth grader.
I'll try it again after we have a break.
Okay.
Need more practice.
Thank you, thank you. I truly appreciate the fact that you took the time to attend all those things and bring back the information. And so, who else has been out and about? John?
Go ahead.
Oh,
Go first, that's okay.
Thank you.
oh, now children.
I was very blessed to attend quite a few activities this month for the board. Number one is attended a Gallup briefing by Dr. Valerie Calderon in regards to student hope and encouragement. Her first session studies was basically on hope several years ago, but now they have incorporated engagement, student, parent, community engagement in regards to moving forward with our education. Also, we had the opportunity to tour the new Kearney High School by Jay Dossel, and I must say it is a state-of-the-art high school that is just incredible to get a look at. If you get an opportunity, please drop by there and, if you will, try to get a visit. It is state-of-the-art with a lot of career education-minded facilities and planning into it. Lisa and I were honored to attend the Education Forum sponsored by the Nebraska Council of School Administrators and the Nebraska Association of School Boards. Lisa and I sat down and we had a balanced approach in regards to what we wanted to attend, but I must say it was a very well organized forum that in such a short period of time covered quite a bit. And also for one of the if you will, headline speakers, they had John Cook from the NU volleyball team give a motivational speech. Was pretty encouraging. I got to say this much. One thing he brought out was in the speech, he noted that a lot of the players that they did not look as being promising during the year turned out to be champions at the end of the year. And thought that was very significant. Eric Crouch was also there, and he set up a hospitality booth. I had the opportunity to meet with Barbara Susha at the University of Nebraska High School, and we spoke about programs, whether it be our high school students earning credits for high school online or earning college degrees online too. And they can provide a year's worth of, if you will, college credits for our young people. And I think the cost was $150 for accredited course. And it was all transferable to the 4 University of Nebraska schools within our state. I was honored to attend African American history events in North Omaha, a presentation given by Deanna Johnson of the National Park Service on the Underground Railroad. And also I was invited by Ben Gray to attend a street naming for Bertha Galloway, one of the big civil rights leaders in Omaha several years ago. A street was named after her. Also attended the 2017 Robotics Expo at the Sac Museum, where over 1,000 students were competing with their robotic projects. Well done to Jeff Cole with the School Community Partnership. He was one of our, if you will, innovative grant awardees, and he's going to carry on his after-school programs accordingly, but it was just amazing to see the participation. With Pat, I was invited to brief the school policies and state policies that are graduate students at UNO. That was very engaging, and they also had very many questions regarding the legislature, where the board stood, and so forth. But thank you very much. Thank you for NSEA for the very productive and enjoyable legislative dinner. That was taken in good stride. Also attended with Patsy, Lisa, and Patrick, attended the annual NAG conference with excellent briefings and heavy emphasis on STEAM. A lot of the classes now were just incredibly involved with STEAM, and I got a well done to John Thompson, the NAG executive director, for, if you will, injecting STEAM and STEM into the courses for our young people. Was invited to at the rollout for what they call Hope Project. Hope Project is a Mutual of Omaha Bank education finance project where they're trying to get involved with a lot of members that need help with their finances and education in North and South Omaha. And that was by CEO Jeff Schmidt, and he's running the new Education Finance Initiative. Also met with Winsley Durant from the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce, and they have a new initiative going on that is, if you will, very complementary with STEM, and that's architecture, construction, and engineering, and that's being worked at the Chamber of Commerce in conjunction with STEM. Future meetings with the reps and NDE are scheduled. Lisa and I held our quarterly breakfast with the Papillion La Vista Superintendent Andy Rickley this past week. And also we was invited to a reception for the new executive director at the Latino Center of the Midlands. Albert Barris, one of the proteges of Rachel Wise, is is the new executive director, and so we've got great expectations for the center, and they do want a partnership with NDE on various initiatives and projects to include GED and English as a second language.
Good.
And lastly, I, if you will, brought together the Educational Service Unit number 3 and a association called Dyslexia, where I facilitated a meeting in regards to dyslexia, wanted to know what they could do in regards to the schools in helping identify future students in need. And that association is ongoing, and we'll have further meetings with that.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Lisa?
Well, I think we've all had a whirlwind of excitement and learning. Oh, thank you, Drew.
I'm new at this, sorry.
Anyway, started out at the Education Forum in Kearney, and I had never heard Coach Cook speak before. And I was so impressed. One of the stories, I'll make it short, he had someone that he had to redshirt. And he felt bad about it, but she wasn't ready, and he redshirted her, but he wrote her a short note and basically said, I need you to prepare for the team. You are going to be the reason we win the next national championship. And I get chills thinking about how he told it, but that girl took that to heart, and she worked her heart out all year long. And so she made the winning shot in that game. And after the game, the coach didn't see her leave where they were. She went to her car and brought something back for the coach.
Yeah.
It was that letter.
Oh, that's awesome.
He said, that girl took what I said. Teachers, people, parents have the power to change the direction a child, student, an adult maybe too. So, as part of the state board, that was very powerful for me. And do we have time for one more short story? I don't like boxing. My dad loved Friday night boxing. However, he showed a clip of Buster Douglas, I think that was the name, against Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson wanted to keep his championship reign, and Buster Douglas was knocked down, I don't know out, but he was knocked down, and he struggled to get back up. And to make a long story short, the coach said, we have to think why we set out to do anything. It's our why that will help us be successful. Buster Douglas had promised his mom he would win. She died 2 days before that. His why for his mom was stronger than the why of Tyson, whatever his name is. Anyway, I told you I don't like boxing. So, not exactly a wrecking ball was another session I went to, and talked about AQuest, how do you fill that out. And an easy way that they do it is to look at what you're already doing to meet this, and they put it on Google Docs. And teachers can go in, they have the tenants on the side, and I don't know if they do it building by building, but someone, gets it all together at the end. But the teachers actually do the input, and it makes it easier on everybody to meet the tenant.
Oh, yeah.
So take that to heart and do that too. Millennials to boomers. If you want more information, that was fantastic. I brought back a handout, and you have the traditionalists that don't want to change anything, and then you have the millennials who want to be creative and want their technology. NCAPS, I think that stood for Nebraska Center for Professional Studies. Anyway, Sandy Creek Unified Schools has an awesome career program, and the kids actually go to businesses. There's a farmer that takes kids. They go to businesses, they get a project from the business, and then they go back and do it. And they did a lot of it with grant money and getting equipment that stays in their school. Plus, if you're junior or senior, you can get up to 2 years of credit, college credit with CCC. And so that's an awesome program. I have more information about that. The Social Studies Summit was amazing. Teachers from all over the state, parents. I had a parent in some other group, but that was awesome, and you'll hear great things about that. Now, this knocked my socks off. Well, kind of. Nanotech, may I stand? Okay.
Of course.
Nanotechnology. I started learning about that 5 or 8 years ago, what they can do with nanotechnology. And UNL has these boxes, these kits, and you can check them out or you can buy them. So I walked up in the front of the room and I said, may I look at the one about gold? I like jewelry, sorry. But anyway, he said, sure, you can have it. And I said, well, I'll just give it away when I'm invited to a school. And so I always taught, and I think it was middle school, so that's way back when, that dye for certain things is more expensive because it has gold in it. That threw me for a loop. So nanotechnology is a way of getting matter down to teeny tiny particles. And it's helping with cancer research, making cars stronger. I mean, it was just a litany of wonderful things that go on with that. Engineering. So I'm going to pass, I have 2 of these, and the people in the audience can look at them too. What do you think that is?
Mouthwash.
Could be, but it's not. Anyway, this packet that you can either borrow or buy for $30 or $50, depends on which one, has guides for the teachers, just so many things. You even get a little laser thing. They give you actual tiles, like for stained glass windows, in red. Okay, here it is. What I'm passing around, this is real gold, by the way. I like that. So anyway, this gold is how that started. They keep making the matter smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, until you get it to look like that. And so the professor, or whoever he was, said, you could keep making that smaller till it disappears. And my little brain's going. So I asked him privately later, I said, so you're telling me that you could come up with a concoction that you could spray on something and stand behind it and nobody will see you? He said, we're not there yet. So anyway, I had so much fun learning more about nanotechnology. These are free to borrow or you can buy. Wonderful stuff, and it's all sorts of science and engineering. And I went to another sectional on the technology saying that by 2020 we have a huge shortage in the Omaha area. Can't remember the numbers, but it's huge. Yeah, and so they're doing, I can sit down now. They're doing career technological things for all girls, a camp in the summer for girls all over the state, all sorts of things going on in Omaha and in Lincoln, trying to get technology, you know, especially girls, but anybody who's interested in technology, because there's a job there to be had. I'm finished.
Thank you. Molly?
I'd like to share some information about the Social Studies Summit that several of us went to. I just found it very compelling because social studies standards are going to be revised, and there's the continued cognitive learning and the foundational knowledge, which is important, civics, history, economics, and geography. But the whole group was brought together, and different people from different walks of life to talk about experiential learning. And it was to really increase student engagement by addressing meaningful issues in their local communities. So in a farm agriculture environment, it's going to be different than if you're in an inner city or depending if you're on the hills or the plains. But the big impetus is to encourage greater civic participation and engagement of the students. So it's not just something they're learning, it's actually fulfilling our third bar of preparing kids for college, career, and civic life. And I think the meat of the situation that I found compelling was the group of people. We were all in different tables, but we worked to help develop a strategic plan for Nebraska's social studies education. And it included development of goals relating to civic participation and engagement, and additional goals and strategies. We put on these wall boards, and we have not received the results yet, but it was so neat to be part of that interplay and to see where it's progressed since we were all in high school. So civics education is a lot more meaningful, and I'm looking for more leaders in our schools to feel that they have a role to play in civic engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a couple of things quickly. As Pat mentioned, the legislative committee is all working to meet with the senators on the education committee of the legislature. And I was able to meet on February 3rd with Senator Kowalski. And so each of us will be working on our meetings, upcoming meetings, and reporting out on those items. And then I was to attend the February 8th Nebraska Braille Challenge, but we had snow. Up north, we have snow once in a while. Doesn't appear to be happening in other parts of the state, but we did. And so I did talk to Sally Gittinger Schneider. Is that the? And we'll try to come down and do a tour of the Nebraska Center for Visually Impaired in the near future. I haven't been there for a lot of years. And if anyone's interested, let me know. I will set a time that's maybe convenient for anyone else also.
Good.
But hope to do that in the next month to 6 weeks to go down and see. As you know, they've brought forward every year some of the things that they're expending trust funds on, as well as they've just gone through some renovation. And that is a facility that operates under the auspices of the Nebraska Department of Education. Therefore, if you're interested, let me know and I'll coordinate that as well. And then on February 16th, I had a road trip with the commissioner and with Drew and with David. And we had a lovely trip to South Sioux City where the former teacher of the year, history teacher of the year, does an activity with students every year around a wax museum. And kids all portray an important historical figure and an important figure that they select, and they have to do a presentation. And then the culminating event is they stand in a large gym area, and they are that wax figure. And you go around and push a little button that they have on their shoulder, and they become live and give you background information on who they're representing. And it was just a lovely, lovely day, lovely activity.
Good, good. Anybody else? Patsy?
I'll try to keep it short.
Well, you people have just been busy.
Yeah, we have. Lisa and I, and Patrick was there as well, attended an advocacy group called LEAP. I think that's the name of them. And we had about 2 hours, I think, of civil discourse. And really what it ended up being is they'd ask a question, and then 2 teachers would talk for a long time about it, and hopefully we answered their questions along the way. But that was in Omaha, and I thought it ended up very informative for both groups. And then I had the opportunity to go with the commissioner and Corey to Waverly to watch some young people do their final presentations, and they're elementary students, and it was a project-based learning. And if you've ever been a participant as a teacher in a project-based learning situation, you find out that kids learn so much by them. They not only answer the question that's been asked, but all the information that surrounds it. And these young ones were standing up giving speeches about it was about water and food shortages, and they ended up finding places to purchase animals for people to start their farms and all kinds of things. But as a speech teacher, I was thrilled to listen to them because they're on their feet, giving speeches in an organized way at a very young age. And I think that's so important, so that they feel the confidence to continue that on in their education. And when they end up in high school, it's not their first speech that they've ever done. I also have been at the Education Committee in the legislature, I think 3 times since last month, since I was with you last. And the reason being I'm, of course, incredibly interested in education, and I want to feel very comfortable in that situation. So I just scoot in there whenever I can and sit down. I also attended the NSEA dinner to introduce us to our legislature, our senators. I'll say that so I don't screw it up there. But at any rate, that was great. And then I think what I most enjoyed was meeting several really, really young teachers and having conversations with them and seeing their passion for teaching. And they both invited me to come to their classrooms, and I'm going there. I'd like to get into schools as well. I also attended the Gifted Conference, the Nebraska Association for the Gifted. And I went to STEM for art, STEM for science, STEM for writing, and everywhere I went, I said STEAM. And hopefully they're listening to me because I'm a proponent of including STEM in the art, or not, but arts in STEM for what they can do, especially in subjects like science. And I always said that if somebody would have told me in math that I needed geometry to make scenery and cut right angles for costumes, I would have seen the relevance of it. So that's why I say STEAM wherever I go. And I also attended the Socratic Method with several of our other board members. And I felt so bad for these 6 students because they were preparing for a long time, and all of their fellow students couldn't attend with them. Oh. And so I went up and said, well, maybe we could come and be an audience for those other 20 kids, and so they get some payback for all of their work. And then I went to also a workshop on high-level learning ability autism. And that was an incredible class. That was at the Nebraska Association for the Gifted as well. And that was probably the most interesting one that I attended all day because it was a stretch for me. I didn't know much about autism other than as a teacher for all those years. I suppose that might be more than the general public, but the speaker was excellent speaker, and yeah, it was a great, great month.
Okay, Maureen, it's your turn.
Well, I too, like Patrick and Rachel, attended the education hearing on February 6th, and it's always interesting to listen to the proponents and opponents. On the 14th, I attended, like Molly and Patrick and Lisa, the Social Studies Summit, and I just have to say publicly that Harris Payne from the department here worked to put together an awesome conference with Dr. Dugash as the facilitator, who I proudly claim to have been my former superintendent in Grand Island. So it was just a marvelous, marvelous day, and it's just good to have that conversation going with our getting ready to update our standards. And I know that Harris and Dr. Dugash are going to continue the work on this that has been happening, and they'll be talking to us later in our work session here. And on the 23rd, I too attended the NSEA Senators' Dinner. And what was so great was the political climate, the educational political climate, not only statewide but nationally, brought together the largest gathering of educators at this annual meeting of the senators, and I believe also the largest number of senators that have been able to attend.
Oh, wow.
At my table, I was supposed to have 2 senators, and they were both in their hearings still at 6:30. So the teachers that were at my table were really disappointed, but because they had never been to the dinner before. And one of the gals had said, I have never written so many letters as I have this year to these education committee folks. And I said, good for you. And so I think that the teachers out there are really starting to see what is happening on the political landscape with their own profession and the students that we teach. I just have to say that I was asked to do a welcome at the Educators Rising State Annual Leadership Conference last week. And I mean to tell you, it's been a while since I've been in a room with 350 plus juniors and seniors in high school. But let me tell you, our future in the teaching world in Nebraska is in great hands with these students that are preparing to be teachers down the road. But these are Educators Rising. Their mission is to cultivate highly skilled educators by guiding young people on a career pathway, to becoming accomplished teachers, beginning in high school and extending through college and into the profession. And all of these students were juniors and seniors. And they spend the day coming together. There's workshops that they participate in, and some of the workshops I wanted to just read to you were learning about the Nebraska Professional Practices Commission. There's an app for that. And we know that teachers today really do zero in on the various apps that are out there in all of their curriculum areas. Another workshop they could attend was finding the right college for you. And several of the colleges were vendors there that afternoon for the students to visit and talk to. You Want to Be a Teacher, Be a Learner by our new Nebraska Teacher of the Year. She gave a session on that, as well as her story of being Nebraska Teacher of the Year. There were like 13, 14 different sessions. But the best part of my day was I was a judge for one of the competitions that goes on during this annual leadership conference. And there are several competitive events. And I was able to get my first choice of what I wanted to judge, which was the job interview. And I have to tell you, I was most impressed. The students knew ahead of time the job that they would be interviewing for, which was a paraprofessional in a special education type setting where there were social, emotional needs, autism, behavioral issues, and whatnot to deal with. So they knew that the background of the job. But what they had to bring to me, and there were 3 of us judges, and I had, I think, 12 students that I interviewed, and the others had like 10, I think, each that they interviewed. But they had to bring with them their resume, and they also had to bring their cover letter. And so my first job was to read through their cover letter and to quick go through their resume and whatnot. And so that's where my questions were generated. And I gotta tell you, it was very hard for me in the end to not want to give every one of these students high marks. Because I gotta tell you, when I was a junior or senior, there is no way that I was that grown up. But I always asked the question, the one question I always asked every one of them was, so what is it about this job that you think is going to intrigue you, or that intrigued you the most to want to be working in a classroom like this? And one young lady in particular said, well, I saw on there where I may be able to work with children who are autistic. And of course, being an aunt to a high-functioning Asperger's nephew and nonverbal, full-blown autism, that caught my attention. And so we talked about that, and I said, well, what is it about autism that is important to you? And she shared her story, and by the time she got done, I could have easily gotten my weepy self, but she said, well, it's because of my friend Henry. And I said, well, tell me about your friend Henry. And she said, well, when I was in grade school, and I believe she said 2nd grade, there was a boy in her class who moved in who was different than all the rest. And she said nobody wanted to be his friend. And she said, but there was something about Henry that really made my curiosity peak. And so she said, I decided my job as a little girl was to be Henry's friend. And she said, Henry and I still remain friends. And she said, he taught me as much about his life and the world he lives in as much as I taught him. And she said, I wrote a book. And I went, well, tell me about your book. And so she said, well, in my next competition, I'm going to be sharing my book and why I wrote it. And I said, so what is the name of your book? And she said, My Friend Henry. And I said, I would love to see a copy of that. And so as I was getting ready to leave for lunch between my 2 sessions, she was standing at the door, and she brought her book to me. And I have to tell you, it was done just like a child would draw 2 little kids with holding hands and being friends. But her last page, like you, Lisa, a little weepy here, her last page, she said, I hope it would be my hope would be that everyone could have a friend like my friend Henry.
Oh, cool.
Good.
That's awesome.
And when I left that day, driving home, I told myself, I need to reconnect with her because I want a copy of that book. It was beautifully illustrated, simply done, but I called my brother and my sister-in-law, who have their 2 sons. Just 2 sons, and they're both have autism, Asperger's. And they cried with me. It was really special. And so my brother called me back the next day and he said, I'm giving you a directive. I said, okay, and what would that be? And he said, I want you to get a copy of that book. And he said, I want you to connect that gal, and I want you to take that girl and see that that book gets published. And he said, I want you to send it to Betsy. I want a copy of it sent to Betsy DeVos so that she can understand how important friends are at the elementary level in public schools.
Cool.
Because his 2 children attended public schools. And so it was really special for me that day. And I loved it, and I hope I have the opportunity to do it again. And one more quick piece. This really isn't a state board piece, but I kind of wore my state board hat a couple of times, but I attended the state wrestling meet. I have a great nephew who is a sophomore from Broken Bow, who is quite the wrestler, who takes after his daddy. But I have to tell you, I mean, I never had seen anything till I didn't even know what incorporated wrestling until last year when I went. But this year, all of his matches were in late afternoon. So my brother from Anselmo came through and picked me up, and I rode with him except for Friday. But Thursday and Saturday we were there, and I have to tell you that we have remarkable teachers out there, coaching, showing how important it is to not only be a gracious winner, but a gracious loser when you don't win your match. And not only was my nephew stood out in that realm of when he lost his one match, he did come in 4th in his class. Pretty proud of him in the end. But all of the students, all the young men that wrestled, all the way from 113 pounds to 280 or 235. I mean, it's just incredible. But also the fans, the parents that are out there supporting these young men, because wrestling is a sport that you are there by yourself. It's only you and you alone. And so I was really proud to be there and to watch our young students and our coaches that worked so hard, our teachers that have taught great values to our students. So I just had to throw that in.
Right. This is going to be a hard act to follow. I did go places, though. The Nebraska Early Childhood Workforce Commission, which I told you about earlier, had its first working meeting the 15th of February. And this is a commission that is going to meet for 3 years. It's an initiative of the Early Childhood Workforce Development Program, one of 2 signature programs of the Buffett Early Child Institute. I am on the commission. Dr. Friesen is on the commission. Sharon Cott, Teresa Berube, okay. Joan Lubers and Melody Hobson. And we will meet for 3 years, quarterly. And these are the 4 goals that they have set out for the commission. Create a shared state vision for transforming and sustaining a skilled, informed, and diverse early childhood workforce for all children birth through grade 3. To adopt a commission-approved version of the proposed blueprint for transforming Nebraska's early childhood workforce as the guiding framework for the planning and implementation process. To develop implementation plans detailing effective strategies, actions, and responsible parties, and to facilitate and promote collaboration among stakeholders throughout the state and assist with public education and outreach. So some pretty lofty discussions are going on, and it's made up of educators. There's some people from business and from the department, and great conversation and very well facilitated. I also was asked to speak to the STANCE meeting, and this is a group of superintendents, our mid-sized schools, and STANCE stands for Schools Taking Action for Nebraska's Children's Education. And there were 11 people there, including Mike Delaney and Dan Ernst. We met at the NCSIA office. And they got essentially the same information that we gave to the curriculum directors today. I gave them the sheet with the strategic plan and then with our information and the committees that we all serve on. They were also very interested in legislation. They certainly understand that, as we have talked about with funding issues, that there are going to be some more issues, and that the department and the staff of the department are doing a lot more than they used to. They're doing a lot of multitasking because we haven't been able to replace some of our staff over the years. And we also talked about the two new committees, the Strategic Planning Committee and the Budget and Finance Committee. And then we just had a conversation, kind of like we did today. I told them that I wasn't into PowerPoints because I didn't know how to do it. And so I said, we'll just have some discussion. But it was a very good discussion, and they were very appreciative. There are concerns, and Molly brings some of those concerns to us and Rachel as well, when they go to the meetings in DC, that we don't know for sure what's going to happen, but we know that we have a job to do, and we will continue to do that until we are told otherwise. So it was very good. But thank you all for all of the things that you have done this past month. We can certainly say, Rachel, that this is shared leadership. Patrick.
Madam Chairman, my mind wasn't properly engaged when my microphone was last
Oh,
time,
okay.
so I thought I'd add a couple things.
Sure.
At the Social Studies Summit, we did have Senator Christ come and address us, and I thought it was important to mention that. We all know, but he's got a bill before the legislature, and he indicated at that time that that is kind of a placeholder, that he's looking for something to put in there that, and hopefully maybe something that came out of the Social Studies Summit will help him do that. Someone mentioned the need for more young ladies to get involved in technology, and I thought that, as I recall, the number of young ladies participating in or taking technology as a major was like just 16%. So there's a real opportunity there.
Sure.
And then finally, I forgot to mention that I did have a meeting with Tim Neal of the Nebraska Organ Recovery, and he talked about what they're doing across the state and trying to visit with high schools across the state on that issue. And I think he's going to be making a presentation next month before the board. So thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
I'll
Okay.
yield my time.
I don't know, we may have to extend this meeting. Okay, next we will discuss the request for meeting attendance. I have on my list Rachel, Molly, and Maureen attending the NASB Legislative Conference this month. Is there anyone that's going to attend the NERCSA conference in Kearney?
I volunteered yesterday.
Oh, okay,
And I volunteered as well.
okay,
And I think I might be interested in doing that as well.
okay. And so you need to see Denise and Donald. Yeah, okay, and I have Molly down for the Doan Cadre Policy Meeting.
Is that on a Sunday?
Yeah, I've done that too. It's very interesting. It really is. Let's see, and Molly requested the AQuest Data and Continuous Improvement Meeting in April. Is there anyone else? Patsy and Patrick, okay.
I'd like to attend that.
Okay. Well, gosh, guys. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is that correct? Okay. And then Molly has also requested to attend the Standing Bear Breakfast on the 12th of May. So does anybody else have anything they want to?
I'd like to attend.
Okay. Any other meetings, Molly?
I do think that many of us are going to our stakeholder meetings, and I didn't know if we need to have that improved, but I would like to go to Scottsbluff and North Platte.
Okay. And I don't have to travel. I get to have one of my own.
So we'll,
I'll go to Norfolk, yeah.
So
You
we're
go
kind
to
of assuming
Norfolk?
that board members will be at their closest
The
location,
closest,
so
yeah.
why don't we put that on our list? And then if there's a different location, however, somehow that you're going to, maybe also let us know, we'll add
Yeah.
that to the list, so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. The monthly board travel expense report is in your materials. And we will move on to section 3. Commissioner, the consent agenda.
Yeah, I first of all, you all are a hard act to follow actually this month, but I'm gonna try. I'm gonna give it a shot. I will say that the opportunity to be at the Waverly Elementary School was a great opportunity, and the focus was on empathy. So as I was leaving there, I got behind this line of cars I was driving right along, and we were passing the high school, and then I noticed, oh, and I was looking over at the high school and thinking, oh, in Waverly, great high school setup that they've got, and a sheriff car flips it around behind me and stops me on the side of the road, and he goes, do you know why I stopped you? I said, well, it must be speeding, you know, and he said, yeah, this is kind of a tough spot, and this time of day, it just, like, we're about 3 minutes into the school zone time frame. I said, well, that's lovely, because I'm the commissioner of education, and I said, I'm just leaving the elementary where we, you know, I learned a lot about empathy from the kindergartners and second graders
Played that
there.
card well.
And he took my driver's license, and he's laughing by this point in time. He goes, yeah, he goes, all of you were speeding. You just happened to be the last one in line, and he didn't give me a ticket. But he goes, any warrants out for your arrest? I said, no, officer, none. And he let me go. And so that's my one thing there. But I thought, well, it couldn't get any worse at all. And then we came back from a road trip at South Sioux City. Rachel didn't get to experience the next part of the fun. We pulled in, and Drew and David were along for this ride as well. In fact, Drew was driving, and we ended up getting off of Highway 77 onto Interstate, and the car does something funny. And I said, Drew, I can see the Capitol from here, but it's way too far to walk to downtown. So somehow we creeped all the way, got to the parking garage, and the car actually died right as we got in the parking garage.
no.
And so we didn't get a picture of it. We had wanted to, I suppose, us pushing the car into a parking spot. So I guess I'm going to perhaps start to have them do video live while we're going on these trips from now on.
Thank
But-
you for keeping the car running while
Yeah,
I was in
I
the
wanted to
car.
point out it worked while Rachel was in the car anyway. So.
Well, I think perhaps, Denise, we should start keeping track of these incidences because we used to keep track of Dr. Breed's speeding tickets.
Yeah. Well, so far empathy is working for me, so I appreciated that. The reality is, thank you for being out and about and visible. I don't think we can understate the importance of that and your leadership role
Absolutely.
as board members. So thank you very much for doing that. I'll get into some of the meeting material pieces here. The consent agenda process, like normal. So if you see anything on the consent agenda, go ahead, that you would like to pull off for separate consideration, go ahead and fill out that pink form and give that to Scott Summers, or put it in his handy dandy box over there. So there is a report on rules on here. There's on the next item. So we have Rule 1 up, which is a rule on the kind of the school district financial reports, and I think we had essentially a technical amendment we had to change to accommodate the Attorney General's office. So that hearing is scheduled for March 24th. We also have to have a hearing on our NDE personnel rules, and that will come up on March 27th, and at a later point in time, that'll be brought back in front of the board for your approval. So those are the two major areas of rules. I will tell you, I'll turn it over to Donlin. I think one thing I want to highlight, I feel quite optimistic about our future and where we're going as a state, and I think it's important that we think through those things. If you just listen to all of your engagement. And I will tell you, I don't know if we mentioned it specifically, but our luncheon with the Nebraska Association of and I'm not going to get it out, school curriculum directors was important. I wanted to mention one person came to me and said, I wish I had a board that was as engaged and as knowledgeable as you are. And I said, hey, look, I think it's actually critical that we model behaviors that we expect to see at local levels. And I think it is important that you provide that leadership and you are that engaged. And so for those things, I really appreciate that, and I appreciated someone else noticing that as well. So with that, I'll turn it over to Donlin for a report on some of her fronts.
Basically, I just have a couple of things. You were just talking about the stakeholder engagement sessions, and so I just asked Drew to bring this up. I did send this to all of you, but so that the folks that might be watching can also see that we have several of the opportunities for our public to be able to offer input into our ESSA plan. And so these are the different locations. So I'm glad to hear that many of you are planning on attending those very important sessions. And then the only other thing I would have to add is we do have 4 folks, including myself, that are going to the annual legislative conference for NASB this month, and Scott Summers will be going along as well, attending his organization sessions. But we do hope to have a Hill visit while we're there, and we'll be there at the same time that CCSSO is meeting, and so we'll have an opportunity to do a lot of networking. So those are just a couple of things coming up. Yeah. And then, as always, if there's anything I can help any of you with, don't be afraid to give me a call. So thank you.
I just wanted to ask this in the public meeting. If someone sees that schedule and they want to participate that we have not invited, whom shall they call?
There's actually on the website, I believe, that they can go into the website and actually do that. And tomorrow when we have our presentation, I know Matt Heisman will go through that in some detail, but
Because
we can ensure, going to our website's our first best bet.
Because if we feed them, we maybe should
We
get an
might get there.
RSVP.
That's right. Thanks, Molly.
That's okay. You mentioned an out-of-state meeting, and I don't know if this is the one, but a couple people mentioned that Patsy and I should go to some place where we would get training
So
out.
that's the NASB. Is that this summer?
Yeah, that is scheduled actually for June. And so we'll
Okay.
make sure that you get there. That's our new board member orientation, and it's really a very good session.
Okay.
You learn a lot there.
I
so.
didn't want to miss it.
Yep, nope.
And do you have a date for that?
Not off the top of my head. I'm thinking it's the week of June 6th, but I can email both of you with that, so.
Yeah, that's a very good meeting. Okay.
And Drew, I feel badly. I did something to Kathy's presentation, and I can't get it to come up to full screen here, so.
So I'll go ahead.
It's loaded. It's just, go ahead.
I'll go ahead and start to introduce the next part of my report, I guess. So we're again lucky to have Dr. Kathy Kennedy able to be with us today. If you remember right, she was going to join us and give a presentation back in January, I think, and the weather and other travel events at that point in time kept her from being able to be here. But Dr. Kennedy has been an important part of our team on establishing really this unique thing of priority school intervention and where we go. And so I'm pleased to have Kathy here. I'll turn it over to her, and then if as necessary, I'll pop into the conversation if you need anything, Kathy.
Wonderful. And you may have to cut me off because I could talk for hours and hours about the progress that these schools have made. What a wonderful opportunity to be in front of you today and hear your passion for educating students in Nebraska. So that was just so heartwarming to sit back there and hear you. And I know you could feel my smiles looking at you, all of you, as you were talking about being in schools and being in communities to help support the young people, because that's a great place for you to be as board members. So thank you for your service. I know that that's not something that you always get told, but it is real important for people to see you in schools. And I can say that as a former educator, how important it was to see my bosses, in the schools supporting us. So today what I'd like to do is just to give you an update on the priority schools that you've identified as the Department of Education that you're supporting and the progress that they have made. All of you received this wonderful notebook that Sue Anderson put together for you last year. And I think that Frida Lang provided one for the new board members as well, or if they're coming around right now. Should you have misplaced yours, please don't hesitate to contact Frida or myself, and we will make sure that you have access to that. I believe that it was online as well in the board documents, maybe? So back in August, probably. So that might be a area that you want to look as well. Anyway, the 3 schools that the State Department identified through a long process, it took about 6 months to go through the process to review quantitative as well as qualitative data to identify these schools that you are going to focus on as per legislation. Druid Hill Elementary School is one of the schools in Omaha, Nebraska, Luke County School in Taylor, Nebraska, and then Santee Community School in the wonderful Niobrara. I enjoyed going to all 3 of those schools, and my consultant and I are there at least 3 days a month, and enjoy working with the wonderful people that we get to see on these visits. The priority process included, as I indicated, the quantitative and qualitative analysis. The qualitative analysis was actually done by me. I visited each of the 3 schools and interviewed the students, I interviewed families, I interviewed community members, the principal, the superintendent, as well as the teachers to determine what were the things that were going well in their school, what were the things that they felt needed improvement, and then what were the things that they needed to get off their plate because they weren't able to be successful with those types of items. Those comments were all put together into a progress plan that they had lots of input in helping develop, which is what this notebook is full of, that you approved back in August. One of the things that's happening within the schools as well is all of the schools, all 3 of the schools, are collecting artifacts. And so they are delighted to be able to present to you. They're in the final process that they're going through these artifacts, and would love to see you in their schools to share these artifacts with you as well, or they'll present at one of these meetings, whatever it is that you decide. But I wanted to share with you just an example of the artifact collection. You'll see this is one from Druid Hill. Most of them look like this, so they have their improvement goal as well as the strategy on the left-hand side. You'll see that this particular one from Druid Hill, they were working on clear, compelling direction and needed to really increase the capacity around procedures and routines. And so the teachers met last May during a work day and worked on creating these procedures and routines. So when it comes from teachers, obviously teachers will implement them. If it's top-down management, more than likely they're not going to take ownership of the process of ensuring that these procedures and routines were within the school. For Druid Hill, just seeing it year before last as well as last year and this year, I can tell you what a difference this has made within the school building. Children are on task at 8:55 when school starts. They don't wait till 9:30 to start instruction any longer. It is 8:55 and they are ready to go. And I want to show you just one of the morning routines. You see how many steps are in this process that teachers follow in the building every morning. Last year I would see students in the hallway all the time they'd have the grab and go breakfast, so they would grab their breakfast, go to the classroom, eat their breakfast, take it back out in the hallway to throw it away. Well, they don't do any of that anymore. They have a classroom engineer that takes care of all of that stuff for them. Just even in a kindergarten classroom, seeing their classroom engineer at work is just absolutely amazing. But one of the things that they also did at Druid Hill is they created videos of their students actually going through the procedure so that they could share this video of their children. Don't you love the sassy little girl there in the second? They could use these procedures and routines they could show it to students so students could have an eye view of what this should look like and what we should look like whenever we are following these procedures. The other thing that they use it for is when they have new students, some of their student ambassadors walk through the videos with the new students. So they're taking the student leadership process as well, and these ambassadors take their job very seriously. Anyway, I wanted to kind of share with you, if I can figure this out, hopefully it'll do what it's supposed to do. Just part of this video, maybe. Yes. know, it's gonna make me sign in to the account, I think, but let's see if we can do that. If it takes too long, we won't do it. You know how whenever you're on the spot, you can't remember your password? Let's see if that works. This is where we all say yippee. Maybe. Here we go.
At 8:40 a.m., open your locker door quietly. Place breakfast on shelf in locker. Unpack book bag. Place school items from book bag on the floor of locker. Place book bag on the hook in the locker. Place coats, jackets, hats on the hook in the locker. Gather school items from the floor of the locker. Pick up breakfast from the shelf in the locker. Close locker quietly. Walk into the classroom door and stand alongside the duct tape. Stop here to be greeted by teacher.
Not so quietly, but you know, we're working hard. So the great thing about this
Greet your teacher.
is that the students truly have taken ownership of these processes and procedures, and no longer do you have major chaos in the hallways of the school, which is what we've had in the past. So it does increase instructional time so that teachers can focus on learning. So if we think about why we're collecting these artifacts, it's really for several reasons. One is storytelling. We want these schools to be able to tell their story throughout the state and how they were able to transform their school from priority status to high performing status. So the artifact collection documentation is going to help them with that. Not only storytelling, but it also will help them with sustainability. So whenever they have leadership team changes, they have a document that they can share with other people about how they were able to make these processes and procedures work in their school. Plus, it's a place to keep all of their artifacts in one place. So then whenever they need them next year, or they needed this particular one in January again to review with the students, they have a collection place that they can go to, like a library, if you will. In addition to that, the other reason for that is leadership development. Many of the principals in Omaha are now calling Sharice Williams, who's the principal of Druid Hill, asking for support from her. So this particular video has been sent out numerous times to other principals in the school district who are having very similar problems, especially around the North Omaha area. In addition to that, it also helps us with lessons for continuous improvement. So as we sustain this process throughout the state and help other schools, because you have more than 3 schools that are in need of support, how do we utilize the lessons that we've learned through this process to help other schools? So we're really good at taking those notes and being able to collect these artifacts. And again, every one of our schools have not access to this, but they have their own artifact collection document. Those are all kept on a Google Drive. So, you know, that might be something that you will request that we share with you one day, that you, if you're interested in seeing all of the work that they've done, that would be a great place to go. Okay? In addition to that, you may remember that the 3 areas that we focused on in the progress plan were clear, compelling direction, which is vision, mission, core beliefs, core values, ensuring that we're not just talking the talk in the schools, but we're also walking the talk in the schools. Addition to that is student and staff culture. 2 of the schools really needed to work at higher magnitudes on student and staff culture. Luke County, for example, has mastered that. They need to just work on student leadership within that process, and they're just going to be fine with that component. And then instructional leadership is one that all 3 of them certainly needed to focus on, and they will continue to focus on. So I just want to share with you, I'm going to take the Druid Hill team and go through those 3 prominent areas that we're focused on, and then I'll show you just a few more for the other 2 schools so you can kind of see what their focus is for this school year. This is Druid Hill, and you see their leadership team. Sharice is in the navy blue right in the center holding the chart, or in front of the chart. The teacher's actually holding the chart. And then you see just her leadership team. And I want to mention that not only is the leadership team here comprised of school level folks, but it also has Mickey Holbeck as well as Melissa Comine, who are from the district that support the school, and then Corey Epler that is from NDE, and of course Dr. Troutman and myself from the consulting company. But you see the smiles on their face, and this truly is just a happy team, and they love to work together. They've done a great job with, now they are in the stage of performing. I think you'll see a remarkable difference in test scores with this particular school this year. You know when teams form, they go through stages. They go through the forming, the storming, the norming, and then the performing stage. We're truly at the performing stage at Druid Hill right now. We weren't there at the beginning of the year, so it's been a process that we've gone through, and I truly believe that you're going to see some remarkable transformations just within this particular school. If we look at clear, compelling direction, you'll see just some of the strategies that they're focused on. I've already talked about those school-wide procedures and routines that was part of their progress plan, as well as posting and communicating school-wide behavior expectations. Last year, they had a lot of suspensions. They had a lot of students going to buddy rooms, what they called, or in-school suspension rooms. This year, they are saving instructional time, and the assistant principal, who's called the SSL, and I'm not really sure what SSL stands for, but she's like an assistant principal. She reports to the teachers every single month how many instructional hours they have saved as a result of students being in classrooms versus being out of school on suspension or in buddy rooms or in the in-school suspension. Our goal is to put the in-school suspension room out of business, so that kids can stay inside of the room. And you know what? We are well on our way. So it's just really exciting to see that the process that they have. You just smile every time that you're in this particular building. They also have an Omaha Public Schools engagement survey that they've administered because they're very interested in getting data from teachers as well as students to determine what they can do in order to improve engagement within the school. And when we talk about engagement, it's not just eyes on text, for example. It's also making connections between text or between subject areas and how this is personally relevant to me. So engagement is a big topic that we talk about at Druid Hill, but you'll see that as far as the teachers are concerned, their results show that their motivation aspects are making a difference for others, the meaningfulness of their work. We would not have seen that last year. The personal accomplishments, because they see students every single day learning and growing in their classroom. So growth is extremely important for them. The relationships with their colleagues, again, that's that team formation process that I talked about earlier. And then their teaching assignments. We did move a few teachers last year to different grade levels, and it has truly made a huge difference with teacher efficacy within the building. Then we also had survey results of what we needed support with, and still student behavior, but we're going to get that. We're well on our way there. Time to plan, that was another one, and time to instruct, we never have enough time. Communication is also one that we still have to work on, making sure that teachers know events that are going on in the school, students know that as well as families, and then realistic expectations. So, sky's the limit for us, and we have to kind of bring that down sometimes to make sure that it is achievable. The other important piece that the Druid Hill leadership team wanted to focus on was student engagement. So we do learning walks through in the school to focus on student engagement. So we might be in a classroom for 5 to 10 minutes, and in that period of time, we look to see how many students are engaged. And again, engagement has some different components, whether it's student-to-student engagement, that they're talking about the content to each other, they're making personal connections. It might be a connection with the text, it might be connections with the world, it could be with another subject area. So we look at that and we actually tally that, and then we come back together and compare our notes. But what you see there is they went from 69% of students engaged to 82% in January. So from November to January, we're just working on it, being aware that we have to make sure that every child is engaged, that we're not just using popsicle sticks to call on one kid at a time. We want all of them focused on the learning. A big thing that we talk about at Druid Hill is we don't teach furniture, we teach children. So it's really important that we don't do all the talking, that they're doing the majority of the talking so that they're learning and that cognitive load is shifted to them. In addition to that, the leadership team was a work in progress last year. This year they are just really focused on that clear, compelling direction component of the progress plan. They have parts of the every staff meeting where they focus on those core beliefs and core values. So there's always activities that they're focused on around that, and they have that again in their artifact documentation where just the things that they've done. They also have weekly planning meetings with grade level teams as well as daily with some. So grades 3, 4, and 5 have a daily collaborative planning opportunity with one of the instructional coaches. And it might be a math coach that works with the grade level team, it might be a reading coach, the literacy coach, or it could be the instructional facilitator. So they are planning every single day lessons that they're delivering in the classroom. We can see a huge difference in the delivery as well as the planning, because you well know that proactive is planning, reactive is teaching. So planning helps us with making sure that that delivery is appropriate as well as the best that we've got. We call it teaching with your hair on fire every day. You can see I do that quite often. No, I'm just teasing. Then another part of their instructional leadership component, they focused on math, and you'll only see math as a focus in the Loop County progress plan as well as the Druid Hill plan, mainly because Santee has many other things that they need to focus on. So we wanted to make sure that we gave them bite-sized pieces that they could be successful with year 1, so that would set them up to be successful in year 2. We really consider Druid Hill year 2 because this is my second year of working with them. I was working with them last year as, and I still am, as an OPS. I'm a consultant for them, and I work in 6 different schools, and Druid Hill happens to be one of them. One of the things that they did, however, is they took the local pacing guides, the ones that the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Department provides for them, and they put those on a long-range planning map so that they knew exactly what they were going to be teaching, how long they would be teaching those particular skills versus curriculum. We have to teach the curriculum, but we want to make sure that it's based on the standards. And they found lots of discrepancies with their curriculum that weren't even addressed in the state standards, that they may spend 3 weeks on. They didn't need to because it wasn't part of the standards. So that whole long-range planning with them has been very beneficial. Druid Hill completed that in math as well as in reading and writing, because those are 3 components of their progress plan. But you'll also see that one of the things that they do at Druid Hill, and they are doing at the other 2 schools as well, they're using the MAP data, which is a normed reference national assessment to help provide instructional opportunities for students for remediation, as well as putting them on a continuum to see where they need to backward map to help support the students as far as priority needs that they might have. So if I'm below grade level and I'm supposed to be learning long division in 4th grade, and I can't do that because I don't have some prerequisite skills, how's the teacher going to help me? That's a really hard concept for teachers. It sounds like it might be an easy thing to do, but it's extremely difficult for teachers to backward map that if they haven't majored in math, for example, or they haven't majored in reading. So elementary teachers are typically generalists, so they have a little bit of information and a lot of stuff. So it's very helpful that we have those continuums for math as well as reading from the math data that they're utilizing. They're using that truly to personalize learning for students. They've not done that in the past because they only had the summative assessment, which was the NISA, that was last April administered, and now this one helps them more with in a formative way. What they've recognized is that they have to do informal assessments often as well, just to assess to make sure that the students are still on target. That's huge to see where curriculum, instruction, and assessment all come together within a school building, and Druid Hill's doing a great job of that. They still have a ways to go, but they're working hard with that. The other process is high-quality math instruction. They do have, the district has supported the school with a part-time math coach who is there at the school 2.5 days a week, and she provides embedded professional learning for the teachers during those grade level meetings, as well as through demo lessons, co-teaching lessons, planning lessons with the teachers, not for the teachers. Very important to distinguish between those two. They also focus on teaching studies where teachers get together, they visit each other's classrooms, and they identify what are these best practices in math that we ought to expect in every classroom at Druid Hill. So it becomes the Druid Hill way versus Kathy's way or versus the principal's way. In addition to that, the same kind of thing is happening with the ELA curriculum, just again, that process of long-range planning and putting on a calendar those things those standards that we are expected to teach our students so that they can master the skills at this grade level to be ready for the next grade level content. And then you see the high quality reading instruction. We really haven't been focused too much on the 5 pillars, even though there's lots of professional development around the 5 pillars, which is phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, comprehension, and vocabulary. Ensuring that children are successful in those 5 areas on a daily basis. That's been a focus of Druid Hill this year, where there are rotations, and the rotations is when a teacher's in guided reading, what are the other students doing? And now the other students, in almost every classroom, we still have some work in a few of the classrooms, but in almost every classroom, the students are working on those 5 pillars versus just a read to self where they look at the pictures and go get another book, and then look at the pictures and go get another book. They have assignments where they're using their leveled reader, and then they have to create a graphic organizer today I saw one at one of the schools that I was in, they were using a graphic organizer to do cause and effect with their leveled reader. So they're using their independent reader to help them to be successful with a grade level skill, which is exactly what we want these young people to do. In addition to that, you can see here the high probability strategies, creating that common language within the school for instruction is absolutely crucial. To do that, not only do they have professional development during their staff meetings, during their early out days, during their team days, there's lots of days that they can have professional learning. They do embedded professional development too, as well as with those grade level planning meetings that they do. And then they do coaching. And what you see here is Sharice Williams with one of her teachers, who was a brand new teacher at the school. I've observed her all year long and observed her yesterday, as a matter of fact, and just the progress she has made. It just makes it brought tears to my eyes whenever we were coaching her. She's just done a fabulous job. And then you see down at the bottom picture there is another one of the 5th grade teachers at Druid Hill. And the coaching process is we go in for the classroom for about 15 minutes to observe. and we document what we're seeing. We look at teaching, learning, as well as the environment, and we document artifacts. Then we bring the teacher in and identify best practices that the teacher used in that 15 minutes. And that chart that you see there, the second column, is a list of several things that we saw. We could have kept going with this particular teacher. But look at the last bullet that I have there. This leadership team has completed 465 coaching episodes this year. 465. That means that they have been sitting in front of a teacher, talking to a teacher about his or her instruction 465 times. That is remarkable for a leadership team to be in classrooms that often. And you know what? You guys are encouraged to be in schools. So the leadership team is encouraged to be in classrooms because that's where the work happens. So I'm proud to report that one to you. This one is Luke County's leadership team, and you see Rusty Rupert, who's the superintendent there, and then Mr. Ken Sheets, who is the principal, and above that is Dallas Lewinsky. Dallas is from the ESU and has been a wonderful partner of the school as well. Matt Huseman from NDE helps to support this particular school as well, and he's been very beneficial in helping us with some electronic documents as well as just his presence on site. I want to focus just with them on instructional leadership. This is where they needed to work. They needed to create that common language. They needed to work on all three of those areas, but this one's the one I'm going to highlight for them. They needed to have that common language as well as alignment to their curriculum, instruction, and assessment. I'm not sure before the state named them a priority school that all the teachers knew that they had these things called Nebraska standards that they were supposed to teach, and they will tell you that. So they're very thankful that they have access to that as well as the table of specifications, so they know exactly what level of thinking the assessment is providing for the students and how far they need to go with them as far as their cognition is concerned. You also see the gradual release of responsibility model. I think I shared with you last year when we did the diagnostic review, their lesson plans look like page 37, and that was it, because we didn't know what page 37 was. Many of them have adopted the gradual release lesson planning format where they really write out what they're going to do for those hard to teach, hard to learn, difficult to learn lessons for students. They write out how they're going to model, what questions they're going to ask the students, what shared instruction they're going to provide, what guided practice they're going to give, as well as what's my closure activity going to be. So it's a lot of pre-planning and thinking through this delivery of this lesson that they're involved with. The other thing that I'm real proud of with this particular team is that they adopted very quickly the concept of putting their learning targets up on the board so students had a destination for their learning every day. And the teachers are really good about referencing those, the students reference those, they paraphrase them with each other so that they know what the expectation is for learning. One of the lessons that we've learned very quickly through this process is success breeds success. When I'm successful with something, you can raise the expectations. But if I'm not successful, then I'm going to give up. I'm not going to try. So we're trying to ensure that students are successful every day with the lessons that the teachers are presenting to the students. The other piece is the elementary literacy framework here at Loop. That is, we began that process last week when I was on site. We did some schema mapping around what does best practices in literacy instruction look like. That was a wonderful meeting that I had with the elementary teachers who teach reading. We spent a couple hours talking through that process, and we still have a lot of work to do with that. So we have some baby steps. That implementation will take place, and then they've already started the implementation. In addition to instructional leadership there, we've hired Kim Baran, who is an instructional facilitator. She's been on board now for about 3 weeks and has just been absolutely remarkable as far as supporting teaching and learning within the building. The teachers last week reported to me that communication has increased tremendously and how thankful they are to have Kim on site. So that's a really good testament to what she's doing within the building. You'll also see the strategies that we're working on with them, those high probability strategies. We we have a math teacher there, Doug, who's in the picture down at the bottom in the blue shirt beside Rusty, the superintendent. Doug is just the smartest person I have ever met in my life with math. Just, you could ask him any questions about math and he can tell you the answer for about 10 minutes. He is brilliant with math instruction. He's the secondary math teacher. And when you walk in his room, he's all about business. He is all about teaching the students that he has in that room, whatever the math concept is for the day. And so we're working with Doug on ensuring that he has things like anchor charts and graphic organizers and visuals for the students instead of just a teacher talk. You know, we want to make sure that the students own that cognitive load as well as him. But you know, they couldn't have a better math teacher as far as content knowledge. We're working with him on the pedagogy, and he takes everything that we ask. He's so coachable. Takes everything that we ask him to do and does his very best to implement in the classroom. Sometimes it's hand over hand that we're helping, but most of the time he'll ask lots of questions to help to ensure his success. I walked in last week when I was there, and he had his anchor charts on the wall, and they were student-created anchor charts. Isn't that wonderful? That was beyond the expectation that I had for him. I was like, way to go. You'll see their coaching log. They have a lot fewer teachers than Druid Hill does, and they have logged the leadership team, and that was mostly Rusty and Ken, logged 119 coaching sessions so far this year, which is pretty good considering that they only have about 10 teachers that they're coaching on a weekly basis is what our hope is. The other part of that is the evaluation system. We're just now getting into those evaluations, but you'll also see over up in the top right-hand corner, you'll see just again the focus on math instruction there. We had lots of support with Denise O'Brien and Dallas from the ESU on the map and setting goals with students, that the map results, and making sure that the students understand that and they're setting goals for their projected growth as well. But you see a few of the other things that we focused on there. Dr. Epler again helped us with paper copies of the Nebraska standards because, like I said before, they were thankful that they now know about the standards and what they're expected to teach at each one of those grade levels and what their students are expected to master. No different for the Santee community, I will share with you as well. An addition at the, finger happy there. An addition for the leadership team at Santee, up there you'll see Cindy Nagel over to the left, who is the elementary principal. To the right is Tony Hoffman, who is the secondary principal. Standing beside him is Kellen Conroy from the ESU. And then the literacy facilitator is Mary Bill, who is in the standing beside Kellum. And then we have a teacher there. She's the science teacher in the school that they were doing coaching with in that particular picture. And then April Phillips is our NDE support at Santee, who April, if she's not on site when I'm there, she is via the internet whenever I'm there. So we're delighted to have her there as well. You'll see what I want to focus on with them is student and staff culture. Student and staff culture is going to be extremely important even moving forward with Santee. There are processes and procedures that need to be put in place, and I think the addition of that was what I was trying to show you there. Vern Fisher, the interim superintendent there. I think that's going to be a tremendous support. I have had several conversations with him already this week about structures and where he's going with the progress plan and ensuring that the staff understands what the components of the progress plan are. I think that we're going to see a change in the culture as a result of his presence on site with the support of the leadership team. They are going to be receiving in April their advanced ed visit. So they're in the process they've been in the process of preparing for that this year. There's just a few concerns around that as far as the principals not being involved in the process. They are now involved in the process, and so I think we have a good handle on it. Kellum from the ESU came through a couple weeks ago to explain the process that was going to happen in April whenever they have their visit. And that's just a time for schools that they do get nervous, but we hope that they will get through it with flying colors and shining stars and all those other good things. So the survey results that they analyzed in January continue to be vetted by the steering committee of the Advanced Ed team, and they're in the process of writing their documentation that has to be put up this week, as a matter of fact, for the Advanced Ed committees. Another issue that they have is two-way communication. Vern has established an open door policy, and he shared with me last night that he has teachers in his office until 5:30, 6 o'clock at night, more than willing to, they share concerns, but then they're more than willing to take recommendations that he has, or sometimes they solve their own problems just by talking it out. So I think he'll be a wonderful addition to that team. He had a staff meeting yesterday where they did musical chairs. You know, they have to do some type of team building, again, so that we're not staying in storming phase for very long. And that's where we have tended to be over the last couple of months there. The weekly coaching opportunities, you can see down in the bottom right-hand corner, the leadership team goes together into classrooms. This staff is a staff that wasn't used to having visitors in their classroom ever, nor were there conversations about their instruction. By the principal, which was only Tony for the whole school in the past, they weren't used to that. So we started off just writing these 30-second, what we call 30-second feedback notes for the teachers, where we would go in and find one thing that they were doing just really well and focus on that one thing and leave a note. If you go into the classrooms, you'll see those notes posted. That's how much it means to the teachers. They appreciate the positive reinforcement of things that they're doing well, and they're much more open in those situations where we talk to them about things that they need to work on. So that's been a blessing that the leadership team has gone in to take care of those as well. So that's my presentation, and we'll certainly make this available to you so you can just go through and read all of the nuances of it. And I'm happy to entertain any questions that you might have, because I know that Commissioner Bloomsted's going to help me with those answers.
John had one.
Thank you, Doctor. I was able to connect with, if you will, Superintendent Evans yesterday, and he could not be happier with what he's seeing at Druid Hill. And
Yeah.
I just wanted to relay that to you.
Thank you. He's on site a lot, so it helps with his presence there for sure.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah.
I can imagine. Two questions I have for you. A lot of the procedures going on at Druid Hill right now, are they being carried over in the other elementary schools in the area? And I'll give you an example as a student ambassador. I was met by a student ambassador at Druid Hill, and I saw that the programs may be carried on at other elementary schools in the around the area.
Yes.
Like Wakanda, Miller Park, and so forth.
One of the things that the district has done is they had a coaching professional development where principals and assistant principals, as well as instructional leaders, come into the building and they do a walkthrough and actually go into classrooms and then coach the teachers. They've done that at Druid Hill this year. In addition to that, there are several principals that I work with. Now, I'm not really sure how that's expanding throughout the district, but that I work with, or that Sharice has told me that it has come through the district, that call her to ask for certain documents, or Mandy, the instructional facilitator, who she goes to different schools and helps them with data analysis and
Yes, ma'am.
disaggregating their data. So I think that's starting to spread within the district. It's probably, well, I take that back, because there was a school that was a high-performing school that actually came and shadowed Sharice one day just to see some of the
Oh.
procedures and routines that they were utilizing. So it's just a matter of time that will continue to help to
Well, the
support
student
it.
ambassador program was just incredible.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
carries over, and the students are very, very proud of what they're doing.
They certainly are.
Quick question for you. You have great expectations for your NISA scores for this year compared to the trending wise. Would you say these great expectations come from student engagement? You're seeing greater engagement with the students? Does that equate to
Oh, absolutely. Student engagement and time on learning.
Okay.
So there's a huge difference between being out of the classroom and taking your work with you with no instruction, to being in the classroom and having a teacher there that can instruct you. So time management has been a key piece for increasing engagement of the students and then raising their expectations as well. Every minute matters at at Druid Hill. That's one of their mottos. And so, you know, ensuring that they're not wasting time is extremely crucial to them. Where last year they would, you know, they'd have lots of interruptions in their classrooms. They don't have interruptions this year. That's frowned upon, to have an interruption in the classroom, like a teacher knocking on the door to go get materials, or sending a student to get materials, or making announcements throughout the day.
Yes, ma'am.
We don't do that anymore.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rachel?
Yeah, Dr. Kennedy, thank you so much for the update, and it's exciting to hear all the progress that's being made. You mentioned the artifacts being in a Google Drive or whatever. I don't know if you've worked with the department yet, making those available through the department for any of our needs improvement schools, or you know, as some sort of repository of these artifacts. I think it would make a lot of sense for those to be
I
available
completely agree.
outside of just having to go within a district, but being able to get those through the department. So I don't know if,
So,
I would think it would be just a,
in the conversations that we've had around that so far, I mean, part of it is going, hey, look, once those artifacts are demonstrating that they're really, you know, up to the standards of our expectations of these are good examples of that other schools would use. Obviously, as we kind of transition from priority schools to, or not just transition from priority schools, but use these examples from priority schools to help other schools, that's critical. And so getting that as part of our information that helps other schools is important.
so are you looking at doing an additional vetting of those artifacts as opposed to, I'm assuming you do a vetting of those
Yes,
artifacts?
yes.
As a part of the
Yes.
process and
Every
part of
month when I
the,
go in, we
you
go through the
and
artifacts.
vet, so there's
And
that
then
first
trying to
wave
decide, yeah.
already.
And some are better than others. You know, they depict the story a lot better, but, you know, they also have people on site that can tell their story with just a couple of sentences, but, you know, making sure that those are available to other people, for other people to use. I'm sure that the schools would want to say, they would want me to say to you, let us get through this year and let us make sure that those artifacts that we have in there are the ones that we are proud of and want to share. Right now, it's to tell their story, you know, but they also know, that was the request of Dr. Friesen and Dr. Bloomstead, is to make sure that we had some way that we were going to be able to sustain this for the state. And so
Right.
these artifacts are going to be crucial in all three schools, mainly because you have an urban, you have a rural, and then you have a Native American community, and they all look different. You know, they're artifacts too. We even have at Loop, we have a board member that's creating artifacts for their progress plan right now, and the superintendent.
Good.
The superintendent at Loop, as well as the principal at Druid Hill, will join me at the ICWES conference in April to share with the state as well, the people who come to that. So that's going to be exciting too.
Good, good.
Dr. Kennedy, did you mention, I may have missed it, did you mention that you're bringing the instructional facilitators from the two of the priority schools together with the Druid Hill?
I did not
And if you
mention
did,
that.
could you talk a little
I
bit
did not
about
mention
that?
that. On April 4th and 5th, or 3rd and 4th, sometime in April, first week of April, the instructional facilitators, who are both new at Loop County and at Santee, are going to join me at Druid Hill to learn from the instructional facilitator, Mandy Moraine there, who is fabulous. She also shares, she's one of the one that shares things that are going on within the school, within the district. So she just told me yesterday that she goes to coaching meetings for the district, and people will say, can you tell us what you think, Mandy? And because they want to hear what she's learned about instruction and improving instruction within the building. So we're excited that Mandy's going to take on a leadership role with her two colleagues that are at other priority schools, and they're just very excited about that process.
I'd also like to add, because it was very exciting and we had great collaboration with the Grand Island Public Schools, that the Loop County instructional facilitator came from Grand Island, one of their outstanding teachers. And so already imagine when that teacher returns, if she does, to the Grand Island schools, what that'll do already for building their capacity. So, yeah.
Thank you for that. That's a great question. Great idea. We'll make that happen.
Well, Kathy, that was so exciting. I found it really kind of basic, and I hadn't even thought about that. But when you were talking about basically the Tier 1 behavior expectations and procedures and routines, I never really thought that was really all about time management, courtesy, and communication. And I was wondering, when you're creating your artifact collection, you probably are going to have to talk about the privacy rights to the students who are
Sure,
displayed.
sure.
But also, this is just me, but I imagine some of those children come from chaotic homes. And I wonder if it would be possible to have hyperlinks for parents to see, this is what behavior looks like, this is what we're expecting. Not to judge the parents, but again, our main message provides support. Because I think, and pardon me for saying this, but I do think there are maybe some parents that don't really understand chaos isn't love. Whatever you want to do, go to bed, yell, throw things. And when I looked at those little kids' faces, they even looked at each other to see, and it wasn't dominating, punitive. It was, oh, this is what good behavior looks like. So that was my
Nice.
aha from your
Okay.
video. But my second comment was, I imagine in some of these priority schools, there are some tier 2 kids and tier 3 that need additional help. And again, not to place blame, but earlier we were talking about the autism and the spectrum students, and I think sometimes those kids are the ones get alienated too. And I was wondering if you were having any additional help for your teachers that have student needs that are outside of the norm.
Yes, that's a great question. At Druid Hill, as well as Santee, there's not as much of that need at Loop,
No.
as there are the other
Yeah.
two. But they've had, for example, at Druid Hill, they've had trauma professional development
Yeah.
because many of their children suffer trauma.
Post-traumatic stress
It is
almost.
very much so. I was just there yesterday at Druid Hill, and ACP, am I saying something? I don't know. Child Protective Services, something C,
Yeah.
was there to take
Yeah.
children to into protective services. So, just and they come to school to get them. So
Yeah.
just that process of that trauma, and how do you deal with that whenever they're coming back to school and being very sensitive and have so much empathy for the child, but yet we still have expectations of learning for the child, because we need to keep their minds
Yeah.
busy. In addition to that, at Druid Hill and at the other two schools, Druid Hill is just masterful at this. They've created what they call an operations team. So when they have their tier 2 or tier 3 students that need extra support, there's an adult there with kind, loving hands to help
Yeah.
support the child. And they're not, they're 2 minutes away or 2 seconds away, just depending on what the need is for the child. And sometimes it's just we hold hands and we walk around the school. Other times it's we sit down in a room so that you're not hurting yourself, and we have a conversation when you're ready. Sometimes it is just rest in the principal's office for a few seconds and let's have a conversation. But the operations team is led by the chairperson, if you will, of that, is the security guard who these kids love, and he loves them. And he just has this presence about him that has such a calming effect on all children. He even has a calming effect on me when I come in. So you just the love and the compassion of this operations team is amazing, and they run like clockwork. Like I can be in a meeting all day with 7 leadership team members, and they're not interrupted for behavior. The operation teams takes care of it. Now, I think at one time it was pretty severe and the principal had to be involved. But other than that, the way that they take care of the children, they have 2 severe needs classes on campus as well.
On Druid Hill.
At Druid Hill, that the teachers are just fabulous. As a matter of fact, the teacher has requested that we come visit her in April for coaching. She just wants more of, how do I get even better with what I'm doing?
Well, I will second your comment about the artifacts, and I really, of course they have to be proven as best practices, but I do think a lot of people don't understand. It isn't that these kids are just naughty and they don't know what
they're
behavior
loving.
looks like, but once you establish that, you can teach. And then when you go to that next level, you talked about the coaching sessions, I think that would be so helpful to share best practices in that. And the only final comment I had was, in Santee, I don't know if it's the same in Santee as it is in Pine Ridge across from White Clay, but there are a high number of medically ill people that are going to school. And I again think parent involvement and support is huge to change that cycle of poverty and also some of those issues that come with
Yeah.
the different populations.
But I'll tell you, the children are wonderful.
Oh, they are, and they
at
just want a
Santee,
safe
and they
place to
just-
learn.
That's exactly
Yeah.
right. You just have to have expectations for them and structure.
And once you do have
Structure
the
is
structure,
crucial.
let's learn together,
That's
and
right.
the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you for just a moment because I know you have to be back.
I have a meeting this evening for sure.
We've had a wonderful conversation. Does anybody else have any questions?
I was just going to quick add. Last week at NSCA's Senators Dinner, a retired teacher came up to me, found me in the group, who is on the board at Loop County, which is in Molly's district. And he wanted to just simply share, Maureen, we have come a long way in 1 year, and he was beaming.
6 months.
And I'm not sure he was beaming a year ago, but I just said, it's all about baby steps, isn't it? And he said, it is.
Yeah. We've taken a superintendent in Loop County who was very upset about being named a priority school. And it was a tough meeting the first time I ever met him. Thank goodness Dr. Friesen was with me, because I probably would have been under the table crying or something. I don't know. But he is now just so excited about this process. He's in every single one of our meetings that whenever we're on site, and he's in the classrooms coaching teachers as well. Stuff he's never done before. You know, he coached on a football field, but he's not coached in the classroom. And he is a marvelous coach that teachers have a lot of respect for him as well. So I'm excited that he's going to be presenting at the AQuest conference. I think telling his story is great.
It's like the math teacher. It's not enough to know it. You have to know
That's
how.
exactly right. And that's the tough part. You know, that technique is very tough, because you have to add value to the teacher's craft, or it's wasting their time. And so, you know, knowing your stuff is real important when you're sitting in front of a teacher and you haven't been in the classroom for a while.
Well, I have had a request from several to take a break. And then we will come back and be mindful of the time, because we just have an hour and we have committee reports.
Thank you for the opportunity. I do appreciate that.
Okay, we are back in session, and we will move on to our standing committee reports. And Maureen, would you please report on the AQuest teaching and learning domain?
I will. The committee discussed the Social Studies Summit, and Lisa and I, who are on the committee, we shared our perspectives of the summit with the other committee members. And I'm going to turn it over to Corey Epler at this point in time to give us additional information for the board.
And he has a team.
Thank you, Maureen. Well, for the record, I'm Corey Epler, Chief Academic Officer for the agency.
I am Harris Payne. I'm the Social Studies Specialist for the agency.
Larry Dugash, and I help facilitate the Social Studies Summit.
We wanted to just give an update on the event that was held February 14th and 15th, and then open it up for discussion perspective relative to those that were able to attend. We had an excellent and very diverse group of stakeholders that were able to join us, between 40, 50 individuals. In e-meetings, there's a list of attendees. You can see who was able to join us and what organizations they represent. As well, we also included those that were invited, but some indicated that they were interested but not able to attend, and then those that we didn't hear back from. We wanted to provide that to you all just to get a sense of the different organizations that were represented or asked to be a part of it. The second document that is in e-meetings, and I have hard copies as well, are the recommended strategies from the results or from the conversations that we had by the various individuals. And it was really a facilitated conversation around this idea of how do we continue to promote and create civically engaged and minded students. And so the recommendations that you see on e-meetings reflect 3 strategies. And then beneath each of those strategies, sub-strategies, if you will, or different ways that strategy may be met. So I'm going to actually leave it there to be glad to answer any questions, or again, we're interested in hearing from the specifically the folks that were able to join us. I know we had a good conversation in committee today. Molly and Patrick were also able to be there for the summit as well. So I'll stop there.
Are there any questions from board members that would like to ask Corey or Harris or Dr. Dugash?
Well,
They're worn down.
Well, that was easy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
it gets to be 4 o'clock, and we sort of, you know.
Yeah. All
Just,
right.
just a comment. When you talked about this particular discussion is also happening in some of our other committees. So I appreciate that, because I think that way we're getting a different perspective, like from policy and from teaching and learning and those kinds of things. So we'll continue with that discussion. Rachel, did you have something?
I was just going to say thank you for pulling it together, the information together, and the recommendations that you have. I think it really gives a broad approach to the next steps in the direction. It gives us some policy direction and leadership that we should be taking. It gives us an element of accountability, but more importantly, it also maps out a direction to help improve engagement and instruction as it relates to social studies and civic engagement. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Any other board members have anything to share? Well, that was pretty easy, wasn't it?
I'll say one thing. I would just really hope in these recommended strategies, keep us apprised how it's integrated with our AQuest, because I believe as it rolls out, if we can do a role, not to create an extra level of bureaucracy, but really incentivize these best practices. And then if school systems start adopting these strategies, I would really like to see some video representations that you would see would be worthwhile being shared. And you are really funny. You're really funny.
That's what my boards used to think.
I will say
And his
too,
advisees.
I mentioned to the committee this morning that as you look at the strategies and the bullets beneath those, it's really, it supports what was outlined in the strategic plan. And that was of no prompting of ourselves. We didn't put the strategic plan out there and say, how do we fit within it? So that was, I think, reassuring to be able to say that the things that were identified by our educators, by our post-secondary representatives and stakeholders really reflect what you all approved within the strategic plan in December. So that was a very reassuring and exciting.
Good.
Corey and Harris put together a wonderful group of people, and not to beat on this, but these are all people of goodwill and quite a heavy intellect in the room, and they expect some action from this. They want action from this, and they're devoting their time to get us to an action phase. So as we all deliberate, let's keep that in mind, that this doesn't just stop. As with any strategic plan, it has to be act, and then show evidence.
Right.
Well, Corey, thank you, and Harris, thank you again for the great leadership in putting together this summit, and Dr. Dugash for your facilitation. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
The Teaching and Learning Committee had one action item on the agenda, and the item is to adopt proposed revisions to Rule 21, regulations for the issuance of certificates and permits to teach, provide special services, and administer in Nebraska schools. Committee members were informed on the proposed revisions, and our staff member, Kevin Peters, is going to share this information with the whole board at this point in time. So, welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. It's a little hard to follow all the stories when now you have to talk about rule revision and be inspiring. So let's just cut to the 4 different areas in which we had to look at making some changes to the rule. The first being fingerprint cost, because the governor had said that the State Patrol had to go back to the initial amount that they'd charged prior to 2016. So we need to return to that amount. So we request that it goes back to $50 per applicant for fingerprints. Right now we're continuing with fingerprints. 12 to 15% of all our applicants have fingerprints in a year, and we're doing 12 to 14,000 applications. So that's quite a few. We would lose somewhere between about $3,000 and $5,000 by not collecting the $8 per applicant for an entire year. So we're obviously not wanting to be in that business of losing money, so we ask for that to be accepted. The professional administrative certificate requirements, we want to look at a professional certificate that is generated at the time that you get a superintendent's endorsement and you've got to the ed specialist level. And we ask that this language come in so that we have more flexibility. The flexibility, because we have different programs offering different opportunities for people to take it here in the state, as well as opportunities outside of the state, so that we do not have to look at, like the Kansas one, in which they go to a cadre system, which is a different instructional model, but it's still a very fine program. But the old regulation said 36 hours. It is not 36 hours, it's 30. And so now we could accept that program without asking for that person moving into our state to have additional hours. So we want that type of flexibility to meet everyone's unusual or different situations. In the state substitute teaching permit, we found that the 90-day restriction does cause quite a bit of harm out there when someone gets injured or has an illness, say in November, and we need consistent instruction in that classroom throughout the rest of the year. 90 days is 1 semester. So that person then would have to be replaced in, say, late April, maybe early May, and replaced with another sub. And that's not good for our kids. They need better, consistent instruction. So that elimination, which has been there for quite a number of years, would be very well received out there in the field. The local sub is as a result of the shortage of subs in many areas. And because there are shortages of people to come in those districts, we're looking in one of two ways. We could look at reducing the standards and what we're requiring, which currently is you want a district letter to support you, you want 60 hours of college work in any area, and the human relations training. So I don't feel that was the best course of action, and after having discussed it with the leadership team and Dr. Bloomstead, we decided to go in the other way, which is, can we beef up the people that we currently have and that the local districts find and support as substitute teachers. So in that case, the recommendation is to increase it from 45 days a year for a local sub to 90 days, which is from 1/4 of a year to a full semester. And we hope that would give them enough days with their local sub people to meet the needs that are out there. We also did some language there in case there is circumstances like one small superintendent, small district called me up and said he had 4 pregnant teachers. He hadn't had that before because he hadn't had a young staff. And so consequently he had them out for an extended period of time and he didn't have enough. He had 4 substitutes on his list and that's all he had. So he couldn't cover everything. The rule is not trying to solve pregnancy.
That was a snow day issue.
Yeah. So what that is it allows that superintendent to come in and say, we need to extend these people because of the need for the varying reasons that are out there. So it would be the commissioner then would decide that we could extend somebody to the end of the time that they would be needed. And then all the documents that are attached to Rule 21 have to change as a result of these different changes.
Are there any questions from board members for Kevin?
I just want to highlight one thing. We've had a lot of conversations with folks, especially in the Panhandle, about the shortages, and I know there's a bill that's been introduced to address this in a different way. But when we reviewed it, we felt like, hey, we would trust that schools would have a good sense of those local substitutes that could contribute to their substitute pool most effectively. And we thought this was at least a good reach out on that front.
I think so.
Okay.
Questions?
Okay.
Well, as a result of the information that Kevin has presented, the committee recommends adopting the proposed Rule 21 revisions.
And we will take that up tomorrow during action
Yes, we will
items.
take that up tomorrow, and Madam President, it's all yours.
Thank you. Molly, would you report on the Student Success and Access Domain Committee, please?
Yes, we just wanted to reiterate the 7 stakeholder engagement events across the state. Please sign up. And I wanted to thank Matt Huseman for giving us an overview of the engagement sessions. And also we wanted to ask each of you, if you have outreach to parents, students, legislators, other elected officials, business community, please make sure you get in contact with Dawn Lynn, and then she'll put it to the right person. Matt, or you could probably do Sharon Cott too, since she's, okay, and then Matt shared the overall vision for us is to advance equity, which is consistent with our strategic plan. And on April 10th to 11th, the AQuest conference is going to include results of the stakeholder engagement sessions. And again, I'm glad so many of you signed up. And then September 18th is the submission date for the final state ESSA plan. Are there any questions from the board? Any additions from any members on my committee? No? Okay, then the only other thing I want to report is the VR transition report. I think we have a real pearl here with Mark Schultz. I don't know if you like to be a pearl or a diamond or what, but I did want to say we're going to have a great presentation from him. But the pre-employment transition services and services for individuals with developmental disabilities need to keep, we need to keep educating our consumers that those are wonderful opportunities for them. And I really appreciated the impact of the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, and you included federal interpretations creating the need to make adjustments in services. And we talked a lot in our group about VR's initiative to be more directly engaged at the local school level. There's some schools, I think, that don't realize what an asset it is to integrate services to their students. and we'll be hearing many more specifics tomorrow. And we asked him to include also some general overview information about VR and about the value add-on to schools and your commitment to provide support. Are there any questions from the board? Anything to add from my committee members? Okay, that's it.
Okay, thank you. I will report on the policy committee. We have 2 action items to bring before the board tomorrow. The first one is B8, and this is the proposed revisions to this policy is to define what a bylaw, a policy, a position statement, and a resolution are regarding NDE and the state board. And we will change how these are referenced and organized in the state board policy reference manual so that there's some sequence and because they've just kind of been added along the way when we've made new policy or whatever, and we need some sequence to it. So that will happen. And following that, then we'll get that to you after if the recommendation is taken to do these revisions, then the staff will undertake the corresponding reorganization of the existing policies. And then as we move forward, we'll have a clear definition of what a policy is, which is a directive to the staff, a belief statement, which is just something that we want schools to know that we believe in, but it's not a mandate. And then our bylaws, which is kind of what rules the board in our actions, and then resolutions. So I think the definitions will be much clearer. Any questions? Okay. We also have B12, and we recommend that be approved tomorrow. In 2016, revisions were approved by the state board to B11, and that's board meeting notification for regular meetings. B12 refers to B11 within the policies and revisions, and were made to align with B11, the only change being proposed there. So we're just aligning 11 and 12. Any questions on that? Okay. All right. Legislative Committee, Rachel.
All right, I'm gonna kind of change the order just a little bit on our report out. We're gonna report out a little bit on a federal perspective as well as a state perspective. In your materials, you have the update of the March work session, which is the update of the summary of the bills, the state board positions, and then also there's a document that's talking points that you might find very useful as it relates to positions on current legislature. I'd like to take a minute and have Molly give a short update from the Governmental Affairs Committee of NASB, and then we'll turn over to Brian, who will give a little update on some of the things that are happening at a federal perspective, and then he'll end with, I think, showing upcoming meetings of the Education Committee from there. So with that,
Okay.
Molly?
All right, we had our GAC meeting on March 21st at 1:15. I'm just going to hit some highlights since we don't have a lot of time left here. On the House, I did want to let you know that they've already begun to have hearings relating to Higher Education Act reauthorization and updating the Career and Tech Education Act. And in the budget process, you may understand it is behind schedule on the federal level, and no budget recommendations are expected to go to the Hill till April. And then also, unfortunately, expect steep cuts across the government when the administration sends its budget recommendations to the Hill. And then we did discuss NASB's fiscal year 17-18 appropriations request letter. Something to keep in the kind of on your radar is the E-rate and Lifeline update. And with the end of the latest 2 commissioners' terms, we're left with 2 vacant slots on a 5-person board. So we do have concerns regarding level of commitment and enthusiasm. And also, we want to make sure that with the E-rate, it does really a good job for students that have a homework gap. If you're from a lower income family, sometimes it's hard to keep up on your academics if you can't increase a digital access to your homework. And then last things are with Secretary of Education DeVos's confirmation, we wanted to also let you know that she's a little slow in appointing sub-cabinet level leadership. They might be restructuring the department. And in summation, the atmosphere is very much wait and see. But if there are leaders you would like to suggest to the Secretary of Education, now would be the appropriate time to do so. So if you have any of those. And my last comment is, DeVos intends to strictly adhere to the letter of the statute in response to Republicans' concern regarding overreach. So look to the statute for guidance in composing your plans. And my contribution to them was Nebraska really is happy with what we're doing with our AQuest, and that we plan to proceed and we'll submit our plans on September 18th.
Good afternoon, Brian Halstead, Deputy Commissioner. At the federal level, as Molly indicated, there's been some activity going on. There is an act known as the Congressional Review Act. It allows Congress, both houses, voting to suspend rules that have been promulgated by any agency of the federal government. Right now, the House of Representatives have passed 2 resolutions dealing with regulations that impact us here at the Department of Education. One of the resolutions would suspend the teacher preparation regulations that were promulgated last year that require a lot of work by states, including us in Nebraska, to collect information from teacher colleges, report on the performance of their graduates, create a report card for all 17 of our institutions in Nebraska on how well they prepare teachers. There's also a separate House resolution that would suspend the ESSA rules adopted last year for the consolidated state plans and the accountability provisions. Those both passed the House in early February. They are now before the Senate. And actually, this afternoon, the Senate started taking up a couple of those resolutions. Senators Sass and Fisher have both reached out to the department, to the commissioner, to know where our positions were on those 2 resolutions. We communicated that the teacher preparation regulations, we had no problems if Congress suspends those regulations. They create quite a bit of burden and work upon states with no funding to support it in order to create data reporting on the teacher preparation institutions in Nebraska. With respect to the ESSA regulations, we've communicated that at the moment we're fine with those regulations. One benefit those regulations have is in 2 ways. They extend the deadline by an additional year for states to meet some of the ESSA requirements. One, on collecting all the financial information at the school level and district level. Right now, all financial data in Nebraska is collected on a district level. That's a major undertaking. The regs give us an additional year that ESSA in its statutory language doesn't clearly imply. There's also an additional time period for some of the data reporting in that regard. So we've communicated to our senators that we're all right with the ESSA regulations, but as we indicated, we'll trust their judgment on what's best. We didn't have any problems with those. So those 2 may come up yet today or sometime this week in the United States Senate. Should the Senate vote in the majority on either one of those resolutions, the regulations would be suspended. There would be no regulations to follow. That would, for the ESSA ones, leave us a little bit trying to understand what the expectations are, although we'll continue forward with the Nebraska vision, using AQuest as our guide, your strategic vision and direction, which is largely what we've been doing. And as Molly mentioned, the House has already started hearings on potential Perkins reauthorization, which the House passed last year, but it didn't get taken up in the Senate. The House is again working on reauthorizing Perkins, so that may occur in the next few weeks. We'll see in that regard. Since some of you are going to DC, that may be a topic if it moves out of the House Education and Workforce Committee at that point in time. What the House did last year, we were very supportive of. It still provides flexibility to Nebraska to use the Perkins funds in the best interest for us. So those are the two major areas of federal legislation. Obviously, everybody's waiting to see budget and priorities going forward. So that's where we are on federal legislation. On state legislation, today was the 39th day of the 90-day legislative session. The progress in the legislature has been a little bit slow this year compared to other years. What I have up on the screen is the 2-page document that has the bills that the board supported with draft bullet points in that regard. Of the bills that you took positions on, 3 of them, LB 347, LB 377, and LB 645 that you all supported have actually been reported out of committee and are on general file. A large number of bills have already been heard and not advanced from committees. The Education Committee last week held just their second executive session of the entire legislative session so far and advanced several bills then. We're anticipating maybe that'll start picking up. So in the sense of the bills that you supported, LB 347 is on general file, 377 is on general file, and 645 is on general file. Any of the bills that you oppose that have already been heard are still in committee. There are many hearings coming up in the next week or two with respect to that. All of the bills that you took positions on that haven't been heard, those are all bills you opposed. So in that regard, next week, the Education Committee will be taking up LB 651, the Reading Improvement Act, and LB 662 to establish the A through F grading system for an accountability. So we intend to be over there. We're hoping to have a board member speak on those, and Pat Tim has indicated her availability, as has John Witzel, if there's a need for that. As you can see, the following week, March 14th, the Adopt the Independent Public Schools Act, which you opposed, will have a hearing. And LB 568, Senator Erdman's temporary teaching certificate bill that you opposed. His 568 was what some of the superintendents in western Nebraska suggested as a response. If tomorrow you adopt Rule 21, you'll provide greater flexibility to hopefully address some of the same issues. But those will be heard on March 14th. And then when you get to March 20th, that is the second to last day of hearings. And there are the 2 civics bills that were introduced that we're neutral on, but I think we'll be doing some work with Senator Chris because he's reached out. He came to the second day of the summit saying he was willing to have his bill be amended to carry out whatever the summit wanted. So we'll be working hopefully with him to see if there's some workable things that need to be done in statute to really carry out not only civics but history, geography, and the other area in our social studies standards, because it's
Economics.
Economics, thank you. I was going to say finance, but that's not in the social studies standards. So that's kind of the session for the legislature. Like I said, pace has not exactly been fast. They've been working on their own internal operations, but then again, remember, 36 of the 49 senators are either in their 3rd or 1st year of experience in the body, so it's taken a while for them to develop their own relationships and understanding. So that's a quick update on legislation. The committee had no decisions to change any positions or take any more positions, so I'll stop there and turn it back to the chair.
Thank you, Brian. I'm also just going to hand out a copy of the letter that was sent to Senator Deb Fisher from now Secretary Betsy DeVos, just so you have that information on what commitment she made to Senator Fisher. Are there any questions? Thank you, Molly, for...
I did have one comment. For those of us that are going to the legislative meeting, would it be a good idea for any of us to go to the breakfast? Pat brought that up. Might be a good idea to go to the Nebraska breakfast.
That's Wednesday morning if
Yeah.
your flight,
I'll still
depending
be
upon
there,
when you've
yeah.
booked your flight, certainly. If you've never been, I think it's great
Yeah.
to go, and so it would depend on flights. The other thing, for those of us who are going, we will put together some sort of a joint talking points,
yeah.
and go through that process.
I just thought
So-
if there are other people, I'm planning on going, so if anyone else wants to attend the breakfast, I would do that.
When is
Okay.
it? When is it?
It's Wednesday morning, and did you say it's like?
It's,
Oh, it's like 6,
Yeah.
7 o'clock, 8 o'clock.
There's-
Just double check. to
I'll-
make sure
Yeah.
that happens.
Yeah, there's a standard breakfast. If you're ever in DC on a Wednesday morning, there is some real value in attending the Nebraska breakfast, because you do have an opportunity to get updates from your representatives in both Congress and Senate. And so it gives a chance to really kind of hear from our representatives what's happening, and to be able to ask some questions as well. If there's no other questions, then I will turn it back over to President Tim.
I will give a report on the Strategic Planning Performance and Improvement Committee. There were no action items before the committee. However, the committee reviewed the convergence of the ESSA plan and the strategic plan. The full board will also be hearing a presentation on ESSA and the progress that's happening at NDE on the ESSA plan. There was some discussion around the timing of tasks for this committee, as well as the purpose and future direction of this group, given that it involves not only the strategic plan, but aspects of performance and improvement as well. We talked about moving some things that we had in other places into, it seems to be a part of the strategic plan. The committee reviewed the Community Achievement Plan. This has to do with the learning community in Omaha, and suggestions were made to recommend more specificity around some portions involving the metrics. And this will come before us in April. And discussion was held on timelines for the next phases of AQuest. Any questions? Lisa?
I thought it was really important in our meeting that, I don't know who said it, that they understand with the community learning plan that if they don't have a baseline, that's okay, but in the plan that they share when that's going to happen. And I think, was it you, Rachel?
Yeah, it was Rachel.
Yeah, if you could just have that on record, because I don't know that they would understand. They would just think, well, what do we do next? But if they don't have a baseline, they have an opportunity to create.
And I think
when that
staff will
happen.
convey that to April and
Okay.
to the rest of them, yes.
Very good, thank you.
And that's all I have. So, John, it's your turn with budget and finance.
Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm honored to serve on the committee with Maureen, Patrick, and Patsy. Done an outstanding job. Thank you very much for your endeavors and successes, if you will. If we could have Bryce and Shane come on up, and we've got one action item and one discussion item on our agenda here. The action item is the review and approve of the 2016 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report Audit. All the board members, all the committee voted for its approval. And second, I'd like these gentlemen to discuss the budget situation for this year and the next couple of years. Thank you.
We had a briefing about the Appropriations Committee budget that was forwarded to us by the Appropriations Committee staff. It's their preliminary recommendation. We received about the middle of February. The commissioner is scheduled to testify in front of the committee on Tuesday next week. And the committee was very favorable in their preliminary budget. They restored the operating cuts that we sustained in the current fiscal year, as well as appropriated new funding for some IT support for the school districts, part of Dr. Folker's initiative, and also some additional funding for the early childhood step up to quality and vocational rehabilitation to access additional federal funds for those projects. Yes, very good on that. Unfortunately, they did not provide as much aid in the form of TIOSA and special education funding as the governor's budget did, but that's part of their overall strategic vision, and certainly we would like to see more on that, but we are pleased with the operations funds that they have preliminary appropriated for us. The fly in the ointment at this point in time was the Economic Forecasting Board. That took place on Monday. They reduced revenue projections for the upcoming 2 fiscal years by $153 million, predominantly in the second year of the biennium. So it will be interesting to see what happens with that. The Forecasting Board will meet at the end of April, after the full budget is passed to general file and on the floor of the legislature, but before we would anticipate a final vote on it. Hopefully they did the big adjustments this time, and it will be just some minor fine-tuning in April as we have another couple months of revenue receipts to come in. But overall, preliminary indications are that the Appropriations Committee is very favorable towards our operations versus what the governor's budget was.
And just to clarify on the TIOSA and the SPED funding, it is still an increase from the prior year. It's just not as much as what the governor had proposed in his budget. So,
In regards to VR, was Mark going to brief that tomorrow?
well, Shane mentioned it now. I think just that there was an increase in vocational rehabilitation, and so that would increase our match from the federal government as well.
Good.
Yep.
Good. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much, fellas. Thank you.
We are approaching adjournment. Again, I want to thank everyone for their involvement in education in our state this past month. I think we're setting a very good example for talking to our school districts, talking to our education partners, and I hope that we can continue that. I know it takes time out of your schedules, but I really appreciate the fact that you are pursuing those types of activities. The regularly scheduled meeting of the State Board of Education will reconvene at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning in this room. This meeting is adjourned.